And here's the other kicker. If you're a stay-at-home mom and your husband is a working husband, he's used to being paid for that time.
So today we are talking about something that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable, right? Because it sits at this intersection of choice and feminism and motherhood and money and abuse. Because the truth is, not all stay-at-home moms are oppressed, right? But women who are staying at home to take care of their families can be victims of abuse. Anyone can be a victim of abuse. But we're really focused on how some of these traditional gender roles really just make it so easy for these men to abuse and to take advantage. Not every traditional relationship is harmful, but traditional gender roles, it's a very reliable gateway to get women into an abusive relationship. And I want to really be able to separate the concept of a stay-at-home mom and a tradwife. Because anytime I've talked about tradwives online, you hear a lot of people that say, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom and I disagree. I'm not talking about you. It's a completely different thing. And really, this is a more broad conversation about gender roles. So I first am so excited to have this guest. For so many people follow you online, so I know a lot of people will already know who you are. Screen name is YV Edit, but I want to let you introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I love all of your content as well. And for those that don't know me, my name is Lisa and I go by YV Edit online. Mostly I'm on TikTok and YouTube, but I'm trying to make my way into like Instagram and Facebook as well. So you can find me on there, working on populating those because it will be a whole different type of content. And I also have my own podcast that's called the Audaci-Tea Podcast. And yeah, we would love to have you on sometime on there as well.
Absolutely. I would love to do that.
Yeah, I'll have my people talk to your people.
Perfect. Women supporting women. I love it. See, that's feminism, guys. That's feminism.
Yeah, right on.
So there's a phrase that just oh my God, it irks me so much. And I guarantee you've seen it in your comment sections too. People say everybody's a feminist until somebody chooses to be a tradwife. What do you think they're missing?
I think what they're missing is the unpaid labor of it all. I think I've heard some version of this flex many times. Sometimes people will say stuff like, oh, these feminist women, they want to go to work and submit to their male boss, rather than just stay home and take care of their children and all that stuff and submit to their husband or serve their family or whatever. And it's like, the biggest difference is not the submission. The biggest difference is that you get paid for one and you don't get paid for the other. And all that to say, it is very hard to tell sometimes who is a stay-at-home mom and who is a tradwife, because essentially one of those things just has a different name. But if you are not getting paid for your labor, and if your labor is sort of being rewarded with room and board, essentially, at the end of the day, you don't have that much power. So I think that the thing that people are noticing that you have in common, both as a tradwife and as a stay-at-home mom, is sometimes that lack of financial power or that lack of logistical power.
Yeah, but don't worry, babe. He'll take care of you. And I know, that's the message, right? He earns the money and somebody stays home with the kids. And listen, as a raging feminist myself, I believe in the feminism that supports all. Intersectional feminism, we get to choose, and you can choose to be a stay-at-home mom. And I absolutely support that. Feminism gets this weird, bad name, suddenly it's radical to believe that women could be financially independent. But we get trapped. Women get trapped. I had the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom, and I was like, I do not think so. And it had nothing to do with my kids. It had to do with giving up my financial freedom. I was terrified. And I wish more women were terrified. You see all these women coming out of this framework being like, listen, what happened to me? And they become the old over 30 bitter women that nobody should listen to, instead of maybe a cautionary tale that needs to be told, right?
Right. And at some point, you do have to question, is this just on, we talk about choice feminism, and basically the choice is it's either feminism or the patriarchy. Like when you're talking about like, I can choose to stay home and I can choose to just not go to work and I don't want to sit under a fluorescent light and I'd rather stay home and, take care of my kids and all that. You are making a choice, but it's not necessarily a feminist choice. It's not necessarily a feminist choice to stay home without pay and to depend on a man, sort of the hand that feeds you can always starve you type of thing. And so I think that's one thing that gets missed when people talk about the choice of it all is like, it is a choice, but it's not necessarily a feminist choice at its core because feminism requires that women would be paid for their work, requires that motherhood would be compensated in some way. Nobody should be working for free to do things that will ultimately benefit all of us as a society. There are people who get paid, you know what I mean, to do harmful things to us as a society, let alone there are mothers out here putting their heart and soul into raising their children. And we as a society don't want to talk about how much that's worth. So there's a lot of moving parts here. Like it's not a good choice for women either way. I think that's what a lot of women struggle with. And like the reason why in so many older countries like Russia, for example, that's something I'm familiar with. And I'm not Russian, I'm Ukrainian, but just I've studied the history of feminism in Russia. And the thing that the pendulum that swings back and forth every couple decades is, yay, like women should go to work and women should be in STEM and women should be scientists. Like in Russia in like the 70s and 80s, women were everywhere. Women had, the coolest jobs. They were doctors, they were scientists, they were, working on space stuff. But the men never stepped up to do their part in the house. And the government never said, we're going to pay mothers to do any type of work. And then the pendulum always swings back to, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to sit under a fluorescent light. I'd rather stay home and take care of my children. And, I'm going to find me a man and all that kind of stuff. So I do just want to acknowledge that it's a tough choice either way. Like you are between a rock and a hard place as a woman who wants to start a family or have kids or whatever.
Yeah, it makes me, although I'm a mother, but it makes me understand women that don't want kids because it does feel like no matter what, the world has something to say, right? The patriarchy is sort of designed, in my view, to be like, you can be anything you want, but you should be only what men want, and you're wrong if you choose A, and you're wrong if you choose B, no matter what. It's just 100%. You fail.
Yes.
Welcome to being a woman. It's
yes.
brutal. Yes. But I do find that in the stay-at-home mom piece, it's more than the financial piece, but I do want to talk about the financial piece. I know that, and I've heard this, and I have to admit, the first time I ever heard the concept of a working outside the home husband who earns money paying his stay-at-home wife, my first instinct was like, what? That's crazy. But within, 15 seconds, I was like, we're genius. Mm-hmm. Because suddenly you start to think, yeah, like I'm doing a job. It's almost like, yeah, we're married. And this whole like, don't worry, you'll get half garbage that a lot of people say is like, he doesn't have to pay you because if you ever got divorced, you'd be fine. We know from experience, right? That's garbage. That's not what happens at all. There's legal battles and fights and he can afford a lawyer and you can't. And, a million different reasons for financial reasons that you feel trapped. So I like the idea of an account that is just for you and a 401k that is just for you. I think that's actually genius. Now, the pushback from men, I think, is fascinating. And I'm not saying that every man that pushes back at that is abusive, but I am saying that every abusive man would push back at that.
Yes, absolutely. And that's something men are not taught to think about. Men live in a world where they really don't have to think about all the stuff that women do because we have sort of shamed it into being like hidden. And I'm not just talking about the invisible labor of like motherhood, but even they don't have to think about how women get periods once a month and we have cramps and we have, all these things we have to suffer through because we've been shamed into suffering in silence and showing up to work and showing up to school and showing up for our family, etc. Men, there's this meme often about men that like they don't know the difference between no makeup and then no makeup, because they don't have to. They don't have to know these things. They don't have to notice. They live in this world that is very much catered to them. And because of the outdated beliefs around having kids and starting a family, men like to think that their presence is enough, like their presence and whatever salary they bring to the table should be enough because they picked a woman and they chose her. And like now she kind of owes them, because they still live with this mindset that they are the hand that feeds you and you shouldn't bite it. And so, yeah, no wonder they get upset. They're like, no, it's an honor. I'm letting you stay home and have kids, and you don't have to worry about paying rent, and you don't have to worry about like food on the table. And it's like, oh, so I'm working for room and board. Got it.
Right. And if you ever go to leave, what happens then, right? But that's the piece. I think that men feel so justified. If you leave, your privilege of being a stay-at-home mom is now gone. So, and they don't ever see the sacrifice. You don't get to be looked at as a person who gave up a career and needs time to rebuild. It's actually mind-blowing, but I think it all kind of circles back to this patriarchal view that they are owed a wife, and that when they possess this wife, that she works for them. And it's all under the guise of like, we're raising our family together. And we just have different jobs, Lisa. We just have different jobs, right? The new, or maybe not that new, but like you see these videos going around of like, he doesn't know our kid's shoe size, but I don't have to worry about bills. Same responsibility, like different jobs or whatever. Horrible. It's garbage. It's that you need to know your kid's shoe sizes. That's ludicrous. That's like, God, the bar is in hell.
Yeah, and that's why I say that it's not necessarily a feminist choice to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom without any sort of income of your own, or like you said, your husband paying you, or some kind of contract where, I don't know, money is automatically withdrawn, or a contract that holds the man to a certain amount of labor plus a certain amount of money. But the reason that that's so taboo, and the reason that I wouldn't necessarily call staying at home a feminist choice, is because you're playing into the benevolent patriarch trope. And so you're basically like, oh, this man will take care of me as long as. It's always as long as. And the as long as can be it exists on such a large spectrum, and men have so many excuses for why they no longer have to take care of you at the end of the day. Like, it's not a stable thing. It's basically like at will employment without a paycheck. Like, you have no contract. You have no nothing. Like, when you are not being paid for your labor at home, or you're not working outside the home, and your husband's like, yeah, I'll take care of you, whatever, as long as you don't let yourself go, meaning don't gain weight after having kids, your body doesn't change, your face never experiences the effects of gravity like the rest, like everybody else, your body never experiences the effects of gravity. God forbid you have a mom bod. You never nag him about what the kids need. You still do his laundry. Because it's also like, a lot of stay-at-home moms don't realize that there's so much wrapped into the general like day-to-day chores of it all, that they're inadvertently also mothering their husband too. So like, if you stop doing his laundry, if you're like, hey, this is too much, we just agreed that I'm going to stay home and watch the kids, right? But I'm doing your laundry. I'm cooking your dinner. Because a lot of moms talk about, me and the kids are happy to eat like girl dinner, like not every day, but most days, me and the kids will just kind of snack. We've been home all day. We had a big lunch. We don't need this ginormous dinner that my husband requests every night with a carb and a protein and vegetables and a dessert and, all that. A lot of women report too that when they make food ahead of time, their husband doesn't respect that. He will just eat until he gorges himself full of food, and then you don't have leftovers. There's so many things that you're not just a stay-at-home mom. You're like a mom to your husband too. You're like putting away his shoes that he's throwing everywhere. You're
left by the front door again. Yeah.
And men, that's the quiet part that you don't agree to. You agree to taking care of the kids.
Right.
You did not agree to picking up your husband's dirty drawers, from right next to the hamper, putting them in the hamper every day and then walking over to the laundry. You did not agree to being his maid, but you are most times.
24/7. I even think that whole concept of 24/7, right? Like, but he works. Being a stay-at-home mom is easy. Being a stay-at-home mom is a privilege. And yet it's a 24/7 job. And what happens in that, in my view, is that a man can get very comfortable. And an abusive man is benefiting. I mean, listen, they're all benefiting, but an abusive man is benefiting hugely because it's your job. And so your job never ends. You're working 24 hours a day. He can then have hobbies, but your job still requires you to be home all day Saturday while he just goes, hey, I'm going golfing, or hey, I'm going to go play basketball with my boys. And you don't have the right to be like, but wait a second, because he doesn't even have parenting as a part-time job because it's your full-time job. So everything comes back to you, and then you get erased in a relationship like this. You get neglected, and neglect is a form of abuse, and people don't quite realize that. Like, you almost don't realize sometimes that, you think you're married to, I don't know, an avoidant or like grumpy man. Are you sure? Or is he abusive? Like the neglect, the inconsistency, the like eye rolls, the God, you're such a nag. That's emotional abuse. And then we're just like, men, men. What?
Yeah. And I'm so happy that more women are talking about this. And I'm so happy that you're having these conversations, and happy I could be here for this one, because a lot of men, you're right. A lot of men are like, oh, you're just staying at home with the kids. It's easy. My question to that is always, why don't more men do it? Women have proven more than capable, more than able of going to work, of making a lot of money. Women are breadwinners in like over 40% of households now. Why aren't more men staying at home? If it's so easy, they don't want to do it. Also, why are so many men really excited about the possibility of no-fault divorce being outlawed? You have to think about that. All of those, like you're very rightfully pointing out, that's how an abuser thinks. They are trying to Tom Sawyer you. They're trying to bait and switch you. They're like, it's so easy. They're gaslighting you. They're saying it's so easy to stay at home. You just stay at home and play with the kids. Just nap all the baby naps. Da-da-da. But then when you're like, hey, honey, I'm going golfing with the girls. You've got the kids, right? They're like, what are you talking? I don't know. Don't leave me with the baby. I don't know what the baby needs. I don't know what shoes they wear. Where's their clothes? Where's their diapers? You leave, they're calling you like every 5 minutes, whatever. All of that is, even if it's not meant to be outright abusive behavior, has the same effect on your system. Yes. I think you can agree. As somebody who has studied abuse, I'm sure you know about this a lot more than I do, but it has physiological effects. It has, I remember I have not been in an abusive relationship with a man, but I have had a narcissist in my life that I've had to deal with. And every single time that I'm around this person or have had to live with them or anything like that, the gaslighting of it all, the walking on eggshells around them, just somebody who doesn't get what you're going through and doesn't want to sympathize or empathize or see things from your perspective, they are by default going to have the same kind of effects on you as very intentional, very targeted abuse. You're going to start breaking out, having eczema. This is what happened to me. I would flare up. My eczema would always flare up. My hair would start falling out. My skin just looked terrible. And no matter what you do, I still was working out. I still had a healthy lifestyle, whatever. But my body was just like, you're not safe. You're not safe. You're not safe. And when you are on call 24/7, there's no backup. Your husband cannot be trusted with the kids alone. Even when you do leave your kids alone with your husband, you have to worry the whole time. The wheels are spinning. You're calling. Did you feed them? Did you do this? Did you do that? Or God forbid, you don't call. You come home, you ask him, did the kids eat today? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. All of that is going to stress you the F out. All of that is going to have you as a person, you cannot afford to be on the clock 24/7. That's not good. That's not healthy. And so even if it's just mimicking the symptoms of abuse, you have to be honest with yourself that it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you're in an abusive situation.
Yeah.
If your husband is neglectful.
Neglect is abuse. Cheating is also abuse, which I know isn't totally the topic here, but all of this, he's at work all the time, you're at home all the time, and you're meant to feel lucky, and you're being gaslit by him and the world around you saying that it's a privilege. I don't want to go on a tangent about that lunatic Pearl Davis, but that debate that she did semi-recently with Anna, talking about it's a privilege. I could just leap through my phone and smack you.
It was so infuriating.
It makes me so angry. It's infuriating. You just are a mouthpiece for the worst abusive men in the world, because if it was a privilege, the men would be doing it. If it was a privilege, they
It's
would
that
take
simple.
it from us. Are you crazy? And even the dads I've heard this before, right? I've been a stay-at-home dad. It was the easiest job in the world. You had a wife, you moron. Are you kidding me? Like,
No, for real.
you had a wife. Help. If I was a stay-at-home mom, I'd like a wife too. Are you kidding? She's still doing all the things. I don't know a single woman I've never met or spoken to, a single woman in my entire life that wasn't doing more than her fair share, whether she stays at
Yes.
home, works outside the home, part-time, full-time, is the breadwinner or not. She's doing more.
I love that you're
Always.
pointing that out because, yes, they would not want to be a stay-at-home dad to another man. They would not want to be a stay-at-home dad to somebody who lives their life as inconsiderately as most men do, and just, having themselves front and center. And I'm not saying that men are born like this. This is like a societal conditioning thing, but it's very hard for them to undo it. Even men who want to be good husbands and fathers will have to go through just this. They have to uproot their natural selfishness and hoarding tendencies, because the way that my husband would explain it, when he had to confront those things with himself, was men are taught that they have everything they have is theirs, their time, their, effort, everything like that. And when women ask for help, right? When really, we say that a lot, when really we should be saying, when women ask him to be an equal participant in his own life, in his own family, he views that as a impeding of his territory. He views that as, you want something of mine. So you want my time, you want my effort. And here's the other kicker. If you're a stay-at-home mom and your husband is a working husband, he's used to being paid for that time. So every time at work, somebody says, oh, I need you to stay late, I need you to do this, I need you to go above your pay grade or whatever, they get compensated for that. At home, he's like, where's my payment? Where's my...
I know where his spin is.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the bedroom.
Yes.
Pay him with your body. Yeah, it's horrible. There's no free ride. There's no free ride, ladies, I'm telling you. Being a stay-at-home... Here's the thing, too. You see stay-at-home moms, and in fact, tradwives. And again, I want to separate those two things, but you see ex-tradwives online starting from scratch, dismantling religion, dismantling patriarchy, figuring out how to decenter men, and coming into this movement that some other women have maybe been a little more ahead on, but they're coming out of it cautionary tale, hello, right here, don't do this. Oh my God, this was the worst mistake I've ever made. In fact, I saw a video last week, couldn't tell you her screen name. She was this gorgeous Black woman sitting in her car talking about how she, 15 years ago, met her husband, married him, and he was in a okay position financially and just in life, career-wise, when they met, and she was doing really, really well. They get married, they get together, they decide collectively together in agreement to have 4 children, and they've lived their life, and she's a stay-at-home mom. And she's like, now, 15 years later, I feel like, and she's not necessarily describing abuse, but she's describing this pattern over 15 years of her pouring into the relationship and giving into the relationship, not really getting anything back. Sort of, maybe she was describing more neglect and just your average, not great guy. His career is thriving. He's doing incredibly well. And if she left him right now, she would be so much worse off than when she met. And she's like, I don't even know what I'm trying to say here, except that the roles have really turned here, right? He's doing well and I'm not. If we split up, he'd be fine and I would be screwed. And that was the whole video. There was no question, but it was cautionary tale. It can happen to anyone. You decide to stay. And it's not that it happens to everyone, right? Some marriages last, but you think right? That's why you really got to get to know the guy before you marry him. You should know who you spread your legs for, as they say, right? These guys are really good peddlers of, I'm going to give you the best life ever. And then society pushes you into that. And it sounds like a privilege and a dream. It's a nightmare. Often it's a nightmare. The amount of women coming out of their marriages in their 30s, 40s, and 50s being like, what was that? It's wild.
Yeah. The amount of, grandmothers and mothers that would warn you and say, don't do it, because they know this. And this is actually backed up by data and statistics. This is called the motherhood penalty. Once you have kids, your career trajectory just takes a literal dive and never recovers. So that is something you have to know. You may escape that narrowly, But I don't believe there's any world in which having kids does not affect your job or your career growth or your trajectory, just like even a little bit, even a little bit. Again, that's not to say that the way we do work and prioritize work and everything like that is right as a society. Like, I do not, I'm from Europe and I am horrified at American like work standards and, everything like that. You're in Canada, I'm sure you are too. But
It's the same here, to be fair, but I'm still horrified because it's worse in the US. Yeah.
It's worse. It's somehow worse. It's like you're not even guaranteed the 2 weeks off anymore. And when you take time off, people get upset at you. And so, yeah, right. So especially in the US, where there's just absolutely no motherhood safety net, there's no like parental entitlements, I guess, you will take a hit. Like, I don't care, even if it's that 6 weeks of missed income, even if it's that, 6 weeks of people have to fill in for you at your job. And like, maybe when you come back, your boss is like, we did fine while you were gone. Like, maybe you come back part-time because, you have a kid now. And it's assumed that you as a mother are going to be the one to take the baby to all of their appointments and pick them up from school when they're sick and, do all of the extra things because your husband has the good job. Like your husband he's got to hold down the fort, whatever. He gets rewarded for it. Married men over the course of their lifetime will make 11% more than a single man and like 9% more even if they get divorced. There's always men always benefit from having a wife. And even if they are so well-meaning about it in the beginning, and even if they promise you the sun, moon, and the stars and the whole world and everything, what a lot of men don't realize is that they have never been taught to expect work to be hard at home. So they get easily frustrated. Because again, there's this idea that staying home with the kids is easy, that doing all this housework stuff is do all the baby naps or do it whatever. And when they fail, it's like you have to pick up the pieces from their ego. Like they get frustrated. They start yelling at the kid. Like even when they're like, okay, I'll help. They're doing it in a way that only a man can do it. Like they're doing it in a way that only somebody who has been told that the sun shines out their ass every day. And, they get paid for every single thing they do. Their mom probably overpraised them for ever, helping or doing the dishes or whatever. It was never expected of them. So even when they do try to step up, a lot of them just get frustrated and quit because they have the same mentality of like a toddler trying to figure things out. And so they'll just use weaponized incompetence. They will start staying late at work, when you start expecting them to put up and do their part, they'll be like, oh, I just have to work late. I have to. And so many men talk about they're not really working late. They're just sitting in their damn car.
Yes. Oh my God. The amount of men that are like, oh, when I drive home, I just sit in the car or I go to a parking lot or go for a drink after work and don't tell their wives, whatever, claim they're working late. Sitting in the car, though, I don't know why that one irks me the most because you would literally rather just sit there and listen to Joe Rogan podcast on your way home and stop so that you have less time with your family so that you help your wife less. You're too stressed to even come home from work. Even the men that come home from work and they're like, I just need 20 minutes. She's been doing this all day and you need a break, but you just drove home and I'm sorry to tell you, but that's your break. And then you and your wife can tackle things together at home and then take a break together at night and connect. But God forbid, right? And he's going to come home, be mad, need his 20 minutes, and then expect sex after still not doing his fair share.
Absolutely.
It's just wild. You're going to pay him to stay home. That's the crazy part. I would kill to have a stay-at-home wife who just did everything for me. That's the privilege. Not to be a stay-at-home wife, to have one. That's the real privilege.
Exactly. Yes. And that's how you know, because men are still trying to hype women up to do it. And it's like, why don't you do it? If it's such a privilege, then how come more of you are not like, look, I can change a diaper. Look, I've been taking care of my little niece or nephew or whatever for years now. I can be trusted. Look at how well I can wipe a counter. I can clean the dishes. I can unload the dishwasher. They don't want to demonstrate these kinds of, good alpha male masculine qualities. Because all of that, they also value all that stuff so much less because it's women's work in their mind. All of this societally and from the men's side and even from the women's own side comes from this idea that women have it easy, that women, that women's work is unimportant. That's why we don't pay for it. And that's the attitude with which he's going to come at every single one of your attempts to try and balance out that scale. And so that's why we say you might as well make him pay you, because you're not going to claw that effort back with, you know what I mean? They can just weasel their way out of it every time.
The lack of value in women's labor, I think, is fascinating. And actually, I was talking to Abby Eckel about this. I don't know if you follow her. She's online too, but
we just had her on the pod.
Oh, amazing. So we love Abby. So she said something so interesting that she used to debate men, or maybe not debate on purpose, but sort of, come at them in the comment sections about most women work outside the home and women are the breadwinners in a lot of cases and all this. And then she had this realization, it doesn't matter. You could make $500,000 a year and he could make 60, and he does not value your contribution because you're a woman. There are some men, and again, it's not that all men who feel this way are abusive, but all abusive men feel this way, that your value is nothing. So it doesn't matter. You're here like, but I do all the cooking and all the laundry and he expects that. This mother effer is entitled to all of those things. So you giving it to him is like his rite of passage. So what are you so mad about? Shut up and do the dishes, right? Make the protein and the carb and the vegetable. You're so right. Like I'd eat salami and friggin' boursin cheese for dinner.
Right.
I don't need to cook a full meal, but I would for a man. Though not the man I have, because he's not like that. But
period. Yeah.
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 And then good men exist. I mean, I also I'm the bitchy over 40-year-old feminist that nobody should listen to. And yet I'm in a happy relationship, and I know you are too. And I think that's the most funny part about it is that we're not the angry women that want you to be single. We just want you to know not all men, right? They keep telling us that. So, hey guys, guess what? Not all men are these misogynistic, patriarchal, mid-loser dipshits. There are great men out there who, I'm not just trying to give men balloons and accolades for being basic, decent human beings, but those men exist. So find one of those men or be single, because being single is 10,000 times better than being somebody's friggin' tradwife.
100%. And I think that's really important to talk about the patriarchy's role in all of this too, because one thing that people don't realize and why it is that we kind of harp on the patriarchy this, the patriarchy that. If you don't know about the patriarchy, then you don't understand that every man who subscribes to it in some way is in fact abusive, because the patriarchy is abusive. It's abusive of women. It is exploitative of women. Now, we can also talk about how it's abusive and exploitative of men too, but maybe in a different episode, because when you come to the realization that men who subscribe to the idea that there's men's work and women's work, there's gender roles, whatever, it's automatically abusive because those roles were made up to exploit women and not pay them. And, Tom Sawyer them into this idea that working is bad, but being a stay-at-home mom is good. It's like your highest calling, which I hate that I have to come out and act like I disagree with that. I don't. I love kids. I was a teacher for 6 years. And let me tell you, I miss it all the time. I'm not a child hater. I am not. I think kids are the most important work. And I hate that we live in a society where women are kind of forced to choose, this room and board situation, or you can, send your kids to a daycare, and depending on your work hours and stuff, you're spending so much time away from them. And again, not to demonize that, not to say that daycare is bad or anything like that. It's all great. It's all acceptable. It's all fine. But it's a lose situation. No matter how you try to do it, even if you do end up with a husband that can pay you for staying at home or whatever. We also live in a society where 99% of people make a certain amount of money. That probably will not make that very realistic, there's a lot of women that want to have kids, but there's only so many men that make, $300,000 to $500,000 a year that can afford to pay you a good and, reasonable salary for what it is that you're doing, which is, even if he were to pay you the equivalent of like sending your kid to daycare per month, that's still like 2 to 3K a month. And then you'd have to hold him to the fact of, well, after those daycare hours are done, you're on the clock too with me. Then we start splitting it 50%. And what man is going to go for that? It's an uphill battle. And it's just like, it's such a lose-lose scenario. I hate it. Because I do think kids should be invested in.
I totally agree with you. I've said this many times before. The most important job I've ever had is being their mother. And I have a boy and a girl, and I think about them differently in the sense that I want them both to grow up, as feminists and to understand choice. And if they want to get married and have kids and all, like, do you, but to make smart choices and to not feel like they have to sort of subscribe to being a certain way. Or I'm going to openly admit, if my daughter was a stay-at-home mom and she wasn't being compensated, I think I would be devastated. She's only 7, so this is very distant future for me, but I need to take a breath. But it literally would devastate me because I don't want her to be set up that way, but I also don't want other people's daughters to be set up that way. That's why I talk about this. I do think there's a real lack of compassion for women that are still in these situations, that are in relationships that are abusive and don't know it, that are in an abusive relationship thinking that it's toxic, thinking that it's the way that it's supposed to be. It's part of why I feel like a lot of tradwives are sort of trapped because it's conditioning that put them there. And so kind of even circling back to, it's everybody's a feminist until a woman chooses to be a tradwife, and then all of a sudden women attack her, feminists attack her. I think we're attacking the concept that she was choosing it. I'm not convinced that being a tradwife is a choice. I feel it comes from conditioning.
Yes.
Maybe that's a bold statement.
No, I think you're so right. Again, it's like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. So if you're a woman who genuinely, wants children, wants to start a family, that is literally such a hard choice. You're going to have to come to that T in the road, and you're going to have to say, okay, who has the better job? Who has the better insurance? Who makes more money? Because if you want to stay home with those kids, and then it's like you're putting all your eggs in one basket. If your husband loses his job, the thing that boggles my mind is that, like, does logistics never cross your mind when you talk about this as a valid choice? Literal, like, life and death type scenarios. Your husband, he could even be the goodest, most benevolent patriarch in the all of patriarchy, and he could be showering you with, thanks and money or whatever, but he could go outside and get hit by a bus. I mean, knock on wood. I mean, God forbid. But what are you going to do then? Are there things, set up for you to actually survive for many years after that? Or is it a one-time payment of like $100K that you then have to, you know what I mean? Like that's most people's life insurance policy is a one-time lump sum payment of $100K. You're going to have to pay taxes on that. You're going to have to, that's like a year's worth of money. 1 year. And I know people who have been looking for work for well over a year now, especially, a lot of these women don't consider the fact that your work gap, that time you spent not working, that's going to fuck you. I'm so sorry. That's going to screw you over so bad when you try to re-enter the workforce. Any woman that's tried can tell you. I had to go for a retail job. I had to go for, some low paying, I had to get a CNA certificate, and, I'm working for $7, $10, $15 an hour.
Yeah, that's brutal. When I had my kids, and again, I live in Canada, you have choices. You have either 12 or 18 months off. It just depends on the amount of pay that you get. You get 55% of your salary if it's 12 months and 33% of your salary if it's 18 months. But the point is you get choice, and you can also take less, of course, right? But your job is protected throughout that time, and then you get employment insurance during that time period. I took 3 months off for both of my kids, and it wasn't a choice that was easy. I've had, of course, right? Oh my God, you only took 3 months? Oh my God, wow, that's more than in the US. Listen, I made that choice very specifically. I remember his offer for me to stay 12 months off, and I was like, but I make more than you. If one of us was going to take more time off, wouldn't it be you? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And quite literally, like, what? I'm a man. I'm like, right.
Wow.
So STFU, and I will be taking 3 months off. And I had 2 different jobs when I had each of my kids. Both of my male bosses were like, listen, I mean, you say 3 months, but I'm sure it's going to be a year. I'm like, listen to the words coming out of my mouth. I promise you. It was easier with the second as well because I was like, I've done this before and I know that I'll come back in 3 months. But I actually think being a stay-at-home mom is the hardest thing in the world. And it's part of why I didn't do it because it's like, oh my God, you guys are rock stars to be able to stay home and take care of children all day. I needed grown-up interaction and I needed someone to participate in the life, which I didn't have. I didn't want to be trapped. So I hear now all these women talking about being trapped, my clients who are in abusive relationships, desperate to escape, feeling trapped and stuck for financial or emotional reasons. Because you stay with these men for long periods of time and talk about, patriarchal conditioning. You get further conditioned in the relationship to manage his mood and tolerate him and pick up his friggin' underwear and all those things that we're talking about. You feel so responsible for him. And I think that's one of the biggest mind F's of this whole thing is that you go to leave this king man baby because you've just absolutely had enough by the time you're 41. You just can't do it another second. And now the world shames you, makes it hard. You still have no money to get out of this relationship. Even the women that have the money, they feel like, oh my God, I'm abandoning this man, this baby, this grown adult baby who couldn't participate. It's no wonder they think, how will he take care of himself? Because you were doing his laundry.
Yes.
He's a baby. But that doesn't help. Women, if he's a baby, then you don't want to abandon him. But I just want to point out that he's a grown adult man, not a boy.
Yes. And a lot of women have trouble leaving for that reason too, because they're like, what if he goes to court and fights for custody? And I recently just saw a video of a woman talking about how she was getting ready for her kids to come back after staying with their dad. And she was getting ready to something help my kids relax after they just spent 36 or 48 hours emotionally regulating their father. And I know people in real life who have had that same experience. Their kid stayed with their dad for 2 weeks or something over the holidays, came home and literally just the smallest thing set them off and they cried for hours, just bawled. A little kid, a little 11-year-old, just for after being with their dad for 2 weeks and having to experience that constant man baby, unregulated, just, disgusting behavior. And it's a lot of women don't leave because they feel like they have to be there to intervene with that because they know that the discipline is not going to be thoughtful. They know that the kid's just going to get yelled at or smacked or whatever. There's not going to be a conversation. The kid is going to see things that they shouldn't see. They're going to hear things that they shouldn't hear. They're going to, spend most of the time, a lot of men do this too. They emotionally trauma dump on their children about how horrible their mom is. Meanwhile, the mom is like, I don't want to put that on my kid. I have so much shit to say about this asshole, but I would never sit here and put that on my kid because that's emotionally very troubling and it's just a lot, So
yeah, but those men will put it on someone else. And I find that really interesting. Men often just do this sort of
they
handoff
externalize.
And studies prove this. I find we can't not at least reference the lack of accountability. And I know there's the whole 100 women versus accountability losers that say that. Meanwhile, statistically speaking, as proven, backed up by science and data, men actually really struggle with accountability in a huge way. They're the ones that are saying, something happened, who did it to me? And women are like, something happened, what did I do? It's just a very
radical
natural
responsibility.
thing.
Yes.
So then you leave the marriage, and they're putting it on the kids. That happens all the time. It's why being a stay-at-home parent, being a tradwife, and again, separating those two things, that is a risk. And it's not don't do it. It's I want women to go into it with their eyes wide open and see signs of the groundwork of abuse before you even get there, more than watch out, maybe he's abusive. I don't want to, put that on women to be navigating the world in a way that we're afraid constantly. But misogyny and patriarchal views is the groundwork for abuse. So if he wants a stay-at-home wife, he wants you to be a stay-at-home mom, and he's positioning it like a privilege, watch yourself.
Please watch yourself. Any man who doesn't realize and doesn't kind of understand this and try to rebalance it in the other direction is going to be dangerous to you eventually because he feels entitled to it. And they all know that it's not the prestigious, well established thing. They know it's not that. They know that it screws you over in the end. So any man who's insistent on that is he knows what he's doing. He's a liar. Yeah. So any man who's not like, yeah, I will either pay you or here's how we're going to make sure that you can keep your job. And there's something we always say on our podcast, and that's mama's baby, daddy's maybe. You have to go into it with that mindset. Anytime you have kids, you have to understand you are over investing. Like the man will never invest as much as you when it comes to having kids. There's no 50-50 when it comes to that. There's absolutely no way that he will ever make it up to you. So my best advice for having kids is do it only for yourself. Leave the husband out of it entirely. Leave the man out of it entirely. And think about, how am I going to do this as a single mom? What job am I going to have? How is my day going to look like, etc. And do it like that. That is your best chance of not being trapped, your best chance of whatever. And it's the thing that's going to radicalize you to tell your husband or the man that you're having a kid with, by the way, anything that I'm doing is going to be for the kid. I don't live here to serve you. I don't have time for that. I have a job. I have a kid. You are literally like, for the most part, unless you are paying me, putting money in a 401k, etc., you are a sperm donor. And you whether you're involved in this child's life or not is not up to me. It's up to you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, hey, come look at the baby, come play with the baby, whatever. And if you're not doing any of that, and if my life is easier without you, then I'm going to move on. And that's just how you have to look at it. Like you have to go full Black Widow, full, I'm willing to cut you off.
I'm devastated by what you're saying as I nod in complete agreement. Because it seems like such a crazy way to enter a relationship or enter a marriage. But let's flip this. We just talked about what it was like to be in this marriage and how women got into these marriages. So I think we're landing on the cautionary tale of how you could set yourself up better, how younger women who are not yet married can. But for the women that are leaving, I get it. There's a lot to dismantle coming out of these, and the grief of the expectation that we were in good relationships when we weren't. And it turns out it's abuse, turns out it's toxic, turns out it's harmful. And we just don't want to keep seeing women just get screwed left, right, and center. So we're waking up to it, and I think we're waking up to it because of more content around this online and more books about it. And there's such great things that people can listen to, watch, and read, including your podcast, including your channel as well. I love, for those that are not following her, which I'll tag in the caption so that people can get to your channel, you really bring these really relatable real life examples and break down a lot of common things that are happening even outside of this framework of, being a stay-at-home mom and being a Tradwife, but more on anything to do with the patriarchy and the way that women are treated in the world and feminism. So you've got to check out YV Edit, but I'll put it in the description, and the podcast, the Audaci-Tea Podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, and we'll catch up. We've also, for those that are watching or listening, we have filmed an episode not so recently, maybe 2 years ago, but I'll tag that as well. So if people want to see more of this kind of discussion from us, I'll tag you in that so that we can have people check out that episode too. But thank you so much for being here.
Sounds great. Yes. And we'll see you on our pod as well.